Dr. Whitlow Foley wiped the sweat from his forehead. The power was out again, and all of his equipment, environmental control systems, and recreational facilities were offline. This was one part of being a xenoanthropologist and archaeologist that he hated, the complete lack of protection from the elements. He had once been the top field archaeologist in Pleiades, but had been trapped in academia for years before he found a sponsor for his multi-dig expedition. This was his return to the field, and he was not as fit as he used to be. Worse, the heat of Pleiades Alpha's multiple suns didn't exactly agree with him. This time of year, 3 stars lit the sky every hour of the Earth traditional day. If it weren't for the very advanced terraforming techniques humans had been using for centuries, Pleiades Alpha would have been uninhabitable. But nothing could completely fix the brutal weather. For that reason alone, he thought it was a lousy place to have built the capital of the Pleiades Republic. But Pleiades Alpha did have its rewards for a xenoanthropologist like him. Foley wanted to start work at the excavation area, a new zone about a kilometer east of their initial site, where he had found evidence of a city from some long-dead alien civilization. He had not found any fossil evidence, nor any apparent writing, but that was no surprise. From studying other ruins on the planet, however, he was convinced that there should be an art gallery of sorts, somewhere on the eastern outskirts of the ruined city. Several such galleries discovered in the past were quite spectacular, and he needed to find something big. So far he had found nothing of any significance since his return to the field. He was wondering if he would have anything at all to show his patrons when it was all over. There was another issue he disliked about being an archaeologist: the politics required to solicit funding. At the start, Foley had been confident that the Pleiades Republic's Government Science Directorate would finance the dig, given his credentials, his well-researched proposal, and the Directorate's current budget levels. To his astonishment, they refused. It was the only time he had ever been refused funding for a dig of this type in his career. He had withdrawn to academia for several years, still trying to find a way to fund this project. Foley eventually found a handful of reputable private sources of funding, however, and managed to gather enough private funds to proceed. It was only after he'd done so much work begging for the money he needed that the government changed its mind and decided to sponsor him anyway. Since then, Dr. Ian Carlson, the Pleiades Director of Science, had sent him more money and personnel, mostly in the form of university interns, than Foley had ever seen in an archaeological expedition. Unfortunately, Foley was having severe problems with this dig despite those resources. Some initial excavations around the buried city had been completed quickly and efficiently, but still they yielded little of interest. It was after moving to a new dig site closer to the heart of the city that his troubles began in earnest, though. The expedition seemed to be encountering new problems every hour, each one resulting in work stoppages and slowdowns. The disruptions often were relatively minor, like the current power outage or a misplaced tool cart, but some were more serious. Chemical leaks from the equipment, the theft of a portable generator, even a wrecked transport vehicle. One of his students had jokingly suggested that someone was trying to sabotage the dig, but Foley had waved him away dismissively. Regardless, they weren't making any progress or discoveries worth reporting, much less coming close to anything worth inspiring sabotage. "Dr. Foley!" called one of his graduate students, apparently in a panic. The student belonged to his class at the local university, and not one of the 50 or so supplied at various times by the Pleiades government. At first, Foley was surprised by how much harder and better his own students were working than anyone else in the dig. Later, after observing more of the intern's efforts, he concluded that the Science Directorate was simply using his expedition to dump its most embarrassingly incompetent students. He wondered if that had been the government's true motive for funding his dig, providing a jobs program for underachieving youth. "Dr. Foley, come quick!" Foley sighed. "What's wrong now? Did the dirt catch fire or something?" The student looked at his professor, gaping. "What? Is that even possible?" The doctor shook his head disgustedly. "If it were, I'm sure it would have happened to us by now. What is it?" "Well, sir, a few of us were talking, and we kind of decided to go ahead and start the dig by hand since we don't have any power to run the electronic tools," the student explained.